Hello and welcome. I think a DPS Huntress is one of the best heroes to get set up for dedicated DPS early on. I think the best time to create and level a DPS Huntress is while you're running Ancient Mines on Nightmare Survival. Ideally, you would jump into Nightmare Survival on the Ancient Mines as soon as you're able to. That way, you have really good gear and you're all set up to play through the rest of the campaign from that point. If you're in Survival Ancient Mines gear, and then you play through the rest of the campaign, you'll steamroll it, especially with a DPS Huntress set up and ready to go. It's possible to get several new heroes to level 70 from a Wave 1 start in the Ancient Mines Nightmare Survival. This account happens to be just past that. It's all I've done so far. Play through the hard campaign, Insane Survival, into Nightmare, and then Nightmare Survival for the Ancient Mines. And I've got all of these heroes level 70, one of each builder, and then another 4 heroes, one of which is my DPS Huntress. So I put her in some Militia, and I think Militia is going to be one of the better sets to go with, either Militia or Guard, because of her stat priority. The high priority stats for her are going to be Vitality and Attack as a must. Boost is probably the third in terms of priority. I would say those three are kind of a bare minimum to go for on each piece, but Skill would be a fourth in terms of priority, a pretty close fourth, I guess. Skill scales way worse than Boost, and you'll be using her Boost probably more than her Skill, and then I guess fifth in priority would be Casting. So on all of her pieces here, I've actually got Vitality, Attack, Skill, and Boost aside from one. I think that's going to be the way to go. You know, don't take Skill over Boost. Boost is a higher priority, but at the very, very least, Vitality and Attack. When you go to level up her gear, the stats that you want to put points into, in my opinion, the best stat is going to be Attack. You want Attack, definitely Attack, but because she's going to be an active hero, level the Armor stat too. And what you should go for is 98% armor across all 4 pieces. So the easy way to do that is 25% on 2 pieces, 24% on the other 2. That's going to get 98% among those 4 pieces to hit the soft cap of 75. In Act 1, you're going to find miniguns. They're a great weapon to go into as a first weapon. Level ranged damage on those, but ranged rate whenever you're able to. It's always going to be worth putting a point into ranged rate. It's going to result in more DPS. It's not worth it to save these 5 points and put them into ranged damage. Always put them into ranged rate whenever you can. In terms of what makes a good minigun, don't sweat the stats here. It's nice to have Vitality, Attack, Skill, and Boost, and Casting, whatever, but the main thing is going to be the highest possible max upgrade, because the higher this number can go, the higher the damage can go. It's not a terrible idea to put some points into projectile speed if you want. It's going to help you deal more damage at long range and make your shots a little more accurate, but I find that if you learn how to lead your targets, like copters say, it's going to result in more DPS overall to put those points into ranged DPS, but it can help you land more shots to put a few points into projectile speed. It's worth considering, but in my opinion, not the top priority. If, say, you're running a boss map or you're having trouble staying alive on a specific map, you can always take these points out and put them into Vitality on her rune power. That'll give you some extra HP and some more survivability. Otherwise, though, I pretty much always leave them in Attack. I go all in on Attack on her for all of her points because I want to be able to do as much damage as possible from a distance, and I want to be able to dodge and stay alive effectively with her movement. She has some of the best movement in the game. Speaking of her movement, her hero boost gives her faster run speed, much better jump height, and those 2 factors alone give her much better ability to traverse big maps like lava mines and summit. It also increases her attack speed, her ranged rate. It does not make the gun hit harder per projectile, but she fires many more projectiles per second with her hero boost active. Her skill does big damage on contact, and it pierces targets infinitely as far as I can tell. It is useful to just sort of fire into a pack of enemies every once in a while if you want, but in my opinion, her ability mana is much better spent on her hero boost. The paintball gun is another good option for a DPS weapon on your Huntress. Ignore the fact that this one is synthesized. I'm over on my main account now. And the ranged attack rate, if you can level it, which if you can't level it, don't take it, but if you can level ranged rate, it'll cap out at 0.1 seconds. And obviously ranged damage, same stat priority for upgrading the paintball gun. These are exclusive to Act 3, so you won't find one farming ancient mines or magus quarters, but when you move on to, say, the Promenade, Royal Gardens, or Glitterhelm maybe, that's when you'll start finding paintball guns. They are also a good option. Something to look out for with miniguns is sometimes you'll get one where you can't level the ranged rate. The same thing can happen for a paintball gun. Unfortunately, you're better off scrapping that weapon. It's much, much better to find one that you can max out the ranged rate. 0.12 seconds is going to be the fastest possible attack rate on a minigun. The reason for going with Militia or Guard for her armor is because Militia will always have attack and Guard will always have vitality. Since those two are the most important, those two are natural choices for her armor. That said, if you happen to have big fat rolls of vitality, attack, skill, and boost on minor or primitive or whatever, feel free to use that. The best weapon in Nightmare by far for a DPS Huntress is going to be a Disintegrator. If you pop the victory chest after the boss fight on the Alchemical Labs with a Huntress, you're guaranteed a Disintegrator with 3 projectiles, which is the reason why this gun is so much better. 3 projectiles, tripling the damage output. Stat priority is going to be the same, ranged damage and ranged rate when you can, but this gun will far outperform any minigun and any paintball gun at equal max upgrades. It's possible to get them usable at level 70. If you farm survival Alchemical Labs, you'll get some really good ones, and they will way outperform any minigun or paintball gun. For a pet, anything is fine at first. Anything to give her more stats, totally fine. Throw a giraffe on her or a gemstone if you want, whatever it is, whatever you've got. But in terms of best in slot, it's going to be out of a propeller cat or a genie. They have 2 different functions. The propeller cat is going to come from either wave 14, a clear on the Alchemical Labs survival, or there's a chance to get one, a 1 in 5 chance from a wave 25 clear. The wave 25 clear ones are going to be much better, but you're guaranteed one from a wave 14 clear. It'll be a flat increase in bonus hero damage, so every shot will do more damage according to the bonus on the cat. When you level the cat, I would say go for attack or vitality, and then level bonus hero damage whenever you can, whenever it's unlocked. It's just a straight up damage bonus. You'll do more damage per shot, guaranteed every shot. The other viable option, in my opinion, is going to be a genie. What a genie does is it refreshes your MP every so often. It's on a timer, but what it allows you to do on a DPS Huntress is keep your hero boost up infinitely. You will never run out of mana with a genie because it'll constantly refresh your mana, assuming you're not spamming your ability. It can't quite keep up with that, but with an infinite hero boost, it can. So here's what it comes down to. If you want really high burst damage, go with a propeller cat. If you want high sustained damage and mobility because your hero boost is always active, go with the genie. In my opinion, the genie's a little more practical, but you can still run a cat if you want. You can get a genie pet from clearing wave 14 on the ramparts, survival, and you can also get one from clearing the throne room on survival. It's a 1 in 6 chance from there. In terms of upgrades on your genie, you can go into attack or vitality, whatever you have, and then MP restored whenever it's available. The thing with the genie though is a nightmare genie is fine even through endgame. You just need to get 200 plus MP restored to fully restore your MP bar. We're not even sure what the number of MP per hero bar of MP is. It doesn't really matter that much. Any genie is fine. As long as it can restore mana, that's fine, and they can all do that, so don't sweat your best genie. The only thing that's going to come from a higher max upgrade genie is the stat rolls being better. That's more of an endgame thing. Whatever genie you get is going to be totally fine. Just get one from the ramparts and you're good to go. The choice between which of the 2 to run during co-op becomes a little more nuanced. So you'll want at least one person to run a cat to apply the buff to the other heroes, because one thing about propeller cats is they buff your whole team. At least more heroes they're able to buff. As far as I can tell, they all have 4 max heroes now. But if one person has a cat, the others don't need one as long as they stay within close range of each other. The most potent DPS hero duo seems to be a boost monk with a genie and a huntress with a propeller cat. A third person could be a DPS huntress with a genie and an EV with a genie to beam. At that point though, it doesn't really matter as much, but as long as at least one person in a group of people has a propeller cat, it'll buff the team if you guys stay together. Once you hit Massacre, the weapon priority changes a bit. You can move away from the Disintegrator as the best weapon because you've got a couple of options that are going to be better and accessible once you get into Massacre. So In the alchemical labs, if you pop the chest on your Huntress, you'll get what's called a Chimera shot. It's a great weapon, hits really hard, and it does really good ranged damage at long range. It's going to be the optimal choice for really long ranged damage. If you beat the summit on survival or campaign, pop the chest there, you'll get a Dragoon, which is the best weapon in terms of pure damage output, and it's going to be better at short to medium range, but the projectiles don't have as long of a range as the Chimera shot, and it's not as good at taking out, say, copters in the distance on big maps. So you've got a choice here, one or the other. I usually go for the Dragoon and just try to get close, but if you're playing on a map where your priority is taking down copters, the Chimera shot's going to be the better choice. In terms of the upgrades, no surprises here. Ranged damage and ranged rate whenever it's available for both the Chimera shot and the Dragoon, that's the priority. The biggest advantage of a Chimera shot is just the huge range and the single stream of projectiles. It is a one projectile stream here and really, really long range. Great for taking out copters, whereas on the Dragoon, it is a 5 projectile spread, so the farther the target is away from the Dragoon, the less likely it is that you're going to land all of those projectiles. So if you're only hitting with 3 or 4 projectiles, you're actually losing a significant amount of DPS, and you'll want to be closer to the target. You do have another option, though, with Dragoon, in that you can level fusion damage as well. The fusion damage does scale, or fusion or elemental. This will be fire damage if it's not synthesized. Either way, this scales really well with the Dragoon, whereas it does not with the Chimera shot. So you could go elemental or fusion damage here instead of ranged damage and still get really good performance out of this weapon. In fact, if you're settling on a Dragoon as your main weapon in Massacre, you can actually go into fusion damage and restat all of your gear, or move away from attack and go all in on vitality, because if you level on a weapon fusion or elemental damage here, fire damage here, this does not scale with attack, so you no longer need attack on that hero. That said, you can't say the same for a Chimera shot. Unfortunately, the Chimera shot does not scale well with poison damage or fusion damage. In that case, you'd want attack, because ranged damage is kind of the only option here on the Chimera shot. So you have a choice here. You can either stay with attack as your main stat on your DPS Huntress and be able to swap between the two weapons freely without seeing a hit on your damage, or you can commit to a Dragoon, go elemental damage, and you'll still get really good damage. You can have high vitality, but if you need to swap over to a Chimera shot for that long range damage to shoot down copters, you're going to be at a disadvantage. This is my end game DPS Huntress. I have her set up with attack. She's got 7,200 attack on her stats here, and just to show you a comparison of elemental or fusion versus ranged damage, leveling the two, I've got a Dragoon here, max upgrades level 333. I've got this one leveled in ranged damage, and I've got a 337 with fusion damage. A slight advantage here in max upgrades, but it's pretty close. And this one is all in on fusion. This would apply the same way if it were fire on a non-synthesized version. So I'll just show you the damage difference. So here is the one with ranged damage maxed out. I'm at 8.2 million, 7.9 million DPS here, 7.8. somewhere in there. This is of course with a cat with 116% and my hero boost active. Now I'm going to swap over to the 337. This one is not leveled in range. This one is leveled in fusion. The same would apply for fire, given that I'm attacking a non-rifted dummy. So let's let it rip one here, and 7.9, 7.6. I'm losing a little tiny bit of DPS here. And, you know, in theory, I could just level all of my points into Vitality, because watch what happens. If I pull those points out of attack, go into Vitality, turn on the hero boost again, I'm going to see the same exact damage because it does not scale with attack. Now, if you wanted to go in on Vitality and stick to a Dragoon, you totally could, but because I'm statted up in attack, what I have the option to do now is swap over to a Chimera shot and still see big damage. That's the disadvantage of going Vitality over attack. With an endgame Huntress, it's your choice. They're both viable. So to put it simply, once you're able to farm the summon either on campaign or survival for a Dragoon, you have the option to spec into Vitality on your DPS Huntress's gear instead of attack. It's up to you. In that case, you would want to level either fire or fusion damage on this. Still ranged rate though. That's a very important stat to level whenever you can. Max that out at 0.3 here on the Dragoon, but now you can go elemental on the Dragoon because it scales so well. If you do that though, you're going to deal a lot less damage on your Chimera shot. You could go poison on a Chimera shot, but it's not a good stat type. You don't really want poison as your element. You could do it, but in that case, you're going to be putting yourself at a disadvantage if you go with a Chimera shot. That's your choice though. Overall, it's not that big of a deal. If I had to give a recommendation, I would say, yeah, shift into Vitality for an endgame Huntress once you're able to farm the Dragoon reliably. Just as a comparison for some more relatable entry-level Massacre stats, here's 3000 attack with a 206 Chimera shot from completing Alchemical Labs on Massacre Campaign Hardcore. Gonna rip up the Adrenaline Rush here, and 2.5 million DPS. Now I've got a Dragoon leveled to 206. It's got a higher max up, but I leveled it to 206 just to give it a 1-to-1 comparison, but this one is leveled into fusion damage to that Chimera shot we just saw. So let's do the damage here. Check out what we get. 4.5, 4.4, huge difference. So as soon as you can move on to farming Dragoons from campaign, it's going to be a better choice and more overall damage. 1-to-1 here with the comparison. Another option for an endgame Huntress, or even mid-game too if you really wanted to play it that way, is a hybrid DPS Poison Trap Huntress, where you could go with some synthesized guard armor here. This is the stat priority that I would look for on this armor, and this is what you would want to do with your whole set, basically. Split the upgrades on the gear between Vitality and Range. I think Range is the more important stat for gas traps, but Fort Range and Rate would be great to have on all the gear since you don't need power on poison traps. And then Vitality, ideally Vitality, attack, skill, and boost. This is sort of the perfect piece here for a DPS Poison Trap hybrid Huntress. In that case also, you definitely want to go with a Dragoon with fusion damage since you're not upgrading attack. But yeah, that's another thing you could do, and that would give you poison traps. It would give you a 4th defense in your hero deck to be fusion, and gas traps are super useful. They don't need power, and they don't really need anything but range and some fortify. Really, you could do the same thing with darkness traps too, but I think the gas traps are more useful overall. All right, that's going to do it for this one. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. I always answer questions in the comments. I do stream on Twitch, link to that in the description, as well as to my Discord server where I'm active every day, and we've got a lot of well-informed people there who also play co-op quite frequently. I'm active there every day myself, so if you have questions that you want immediate answers to, by all means pop into the Discord as well and leave it there. But that's going to do it for me here now. Thank you so much for watching.